The CAQ's win in Quebec is part of a trend that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is likely watching very closely. Conservative-leaning parties now control all but two provinces. And in seat-rich Ontario and Quebec, the premiers have both earned their second straight majorities with an increase in seats. So joining us with more this morning is CTV News' Mackenzie Gray. Good morning to you.
Hi, Anne-Marie.
So the Liberals are finding themselves very alone in Ottawa. What does an almost entirely Conservative provincial electorate mean for Trudeau's ability to govern?
I don't think it changes a ton right at this point in time, only because the Prime Minister has a working relationships with a lot of these different premiers. François Legault, Doug Ford, they've been in through COVID, which is the key point in all of this. They had what felt like a million different First Ministers meetings throughout COVID, where the Prime Minister and the premiers would have conversations about funding and different things to do with COVID. And really going through the second and third and fourth waves of COVID that we had, it seemed like there was almost an unspoken truce between the premiers and the federal government. We weren't going to attack each other. We were going to try and focus and get things done. And that's what we've heard a lot from Doug Ford in Ontario, at least, saying, look, there's more that I have in common with Justin Trudeau where we can try and focus and get things done than we have that we disagree on. So let's focus on those things that we can get done. But I really think the wild card in all of this, Anne-Marie, is what happens in Thursday in Calgary. If Danielle Smith becomes the new Alberta Premier, that changes the calculus where this Sovereignty Act that she's talked about that could potentially try to overrule federal laws could really change the federal-provincial dynamic and take up more oxygen on issues like that instead of focusing on things like healthcare, which all the other premiers really want to focus on.
Yeah, and I want to put that as my next question to you. So the path to a federal election, we know, victory, will run through both Ontario and Quebec. Both of those provinces are very seat-rich, and both of those provinces have clashed in the past with the federal government on issues like healthcare transfers, or in Quebec's case, more recently, immigration. So with both of those provinces now holding strong mandates, how much leverage do they have over Ottawa?
I certainly think in Quebec, François Legault has more leverage than Doug Ford has. Mr. Legault is kind of on this nationalist agenda in Quebec, and both Mr. Poilievre and Mr. Trudeau, I don't think, are going to want to get in his way in terms of bringing any of those things in. Let's take a look at Bill 21. Both the previous Conservative leaders and Mr. Trudeau were kind of tepid in their criticism of Bill 21, not really wanting to get involved at a federal level, essentially leaving that to Quebec, despite the fact that most Canadians would say that's something that they don't agree with. When you take a look, though, at the healthcare issue, certainly there's unanimity across the board, whether you're a Conservative premier like Doug Ford or you're John Horgan out in BC. All of the premiers agree on that. But, you know, Anne-Marie, all the way back to Confederation, there's been a long-standing tradition in Canada that the federal government and the provinces argue about who's going to pay for what. To go back to what Pierre Trudeau said 40 years ago, the provinces love 50-cent bucks. And if the federal government can come to the table with some kind of deal like we saw with daycare, but for federal health transfers, where they say, hey, we want dedicated transfers towards mental health and long-term care, two areas the Trudeau government has said they want to spend money on, it's hard to see the provinces turning that down, despite the fact that they want at least $26 billion without any strings attached.
Mackenzie, while I have you here, I want to pick up on something you mentioned yesterday. Ontario Premier Doug Ford was quick to congratulate Premier François Legault after that election win. That happened on social media. And then a couple weeks ago when you and I were chatting, we were mentioning that Doug Ford also attended an Atlantic Premiers Conference over the summer. What could be the game plan behind those decisions to be so front and center in his relationships with other premiers?
Well, I think he wants to kind of be the new leader of the room. John Horgan is currently the kind of the head premier of the Council of Federations. That's kind of the provincial premiers club. I think Doug Ford is now kind of one of the elder statesmen. He wants to be someone who can lead. Look, he's got a good relationship with Justin Trudeau. I know it doesn't sound like they would, considering their politics. And he has an excellent relationship with Chrystia Freeland, Deputy Prime Minister. So he could kind of be the conduit to be able to kind of broker negotiations on something like healthcare or on other federal provincial issues. And also, you know, especially if Danielle Smith gets elected in Alberta, he's one of the more moderate Conservative premiers. And going back to what I said earlier, they've been able to find in Ontario and Ottawa different issues that they can focus on. If he can take that kind of approach to the healthcare table, he could kind of be looking like the political leader nationally to try and get something done on healthcare, an issue that we know Canadians are really focused on.
All right, Mackenzie Gray, always good to talk to you from Ottawa today. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Anne-Marie.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.